Today we're going to learn how to do the tubular cast on. So you can see here I've got a 2x2 rib, which started off as a single rib, but by switching the position of the stitches, I ended up doing a 2x2 rib. You can also do a 1x1. It's hard to see in the black here, but it's the only one I have with a single rib. And then I just twisted it. So let's get started. For a tubular cast on, you need to start with some scrap yarn. So a smooth scrap yarn. I ultimately want to end up with 120 stitches. So I've cast on using the long tail, half the stitches plus one with the scrap yarn. So then I'm going to pick up my project yarn, which is this light pink here. Hopefully you can see that against the white. I've got a short circular, and I'm going to start by purling that whole first row. It's a little fiddly at first, but it'll be fine. So purl that whole first row. And then we'll come back and I'll show you the next step. So step one is all done. Step two is we're going to knit that first stitch. We haven't joined yet. We're going to join eventually, but not right now. So we're going to knit that first one, and then we're going to go get that bar that's between the two stitches. We're going to load it on the left needle and we're going to purl it. So we're doubling the amount of stitches. So knit, bring the yarn in front. We're going to pull up this leg here, load it on the left needle just to make it easier, and we're going to purl it. So I've tried this casting on with just the knit cast on with the contrast yarn, and I find that it's a lot easier to pick up that bar between the stitches when you do a long tail. It's just more accessible. It's there. You can just even go in, pick it up, purl it. Whoop, I lost it. Depending on how comfortable you are. So knit, pick it up, purl it, knit, pick it up, purl, knit. So much easier with the long tail cast on. If you did the knit cast on, go back and redo your contrast, your scrap yarn cast on. It's way easier to pick up. So knit. Here we are at the end of the round, or the row, sorry, picking up my last few purl stitches. And here is why we have that extra stitch, because we need that 61st stitch so that we have a bar to pick up between to finish up the rib. So I'm going to stop right here, just have a look and make sure everything looks good. You should have a knit and a purl and a knit and a purl. And you should also have now 121 stitches. So if you need to take a break, pause here and just count your stitches to make sure. We're going to insert a stitch marker right here after that last purl stitch. And then we're going to bring those stitches around to the beginning. I have a really small circular right here, so this is going to be a lot easier. Otherwise, it may have been tough. So snag that last stitch, just make it a little bit tighter here. And then we're going to knit that we're going to knit that first stitch and that last stitch together. And now we're down to 120. So we're going to snug that up a little bit. And there you go. So now we're ready to start the next step. The first round that's joined, we're going to knit all the stitches, but we're going to slip all the purl stitches with the yarn in front. So my yarn's in front, I'm going to slip that purl stitch, bring the yarn back, knit. Bring the yarn forward, slip that purl stitch, bring the yarn back, and knit. Bring the yarn forward, slip, and knit. Yarn forward, purl, slip the purl, bring the yarn back. So we're going to do that till we get back to our beginning of round marker. Once you get the hang of it, there's a little rhythm, and then you start to be able to see what's happening with that, the way that it kind of just curls into itself, so you get that really nice edge. So I'll be back. I'm getting close to the end here, and I just wanted to show you this part got all loosey-goosey, so don't worry about it. Just grab your ends and snug it up a little bit so it's neat again. So I'm just nearing the end, and we'll move on to the next step, which is the last step if you're doing a knit one, purl one rib. If you want to switch to a knit two, purl two rib, then you'll go to the next step. Almost done here. See, again, it just gets a little loose, but it'll be fine once you've worked a couple of rounds. So I'm on my stitch marker. I'm going to move it over, and the next one, we just slipped the purl stitches, right? So this time we're going to slip the knit stitches. So with your yarn in back, you're going to slip that stitch as if to purl. Always slip as if to purl unless otherwise stated. I'm just going to try and snug this up a little bit here. And then we're going to purl the purls and slip the knits. So with yarn in back, slip that knit stitch, purl the purl, yarn in back, slip that knit, purl, yarn in back, slip the knit, back to the front, and yarn back, slip that knit stitch, purl the purl, and you can see that leg. This is the slip from the last round. Slip that knit, purl. So yours may not be this tight. I used fingering weight because that's what I had when I cast this on, but this is more of a sporty worsted weights a little bit. It's the Drops Charisma. So I probably should have gotten into my bin and picked a thicker yarn, but that's what I had. So purl, slip the knit, purl, slip the knit, purl. And there you have it. See what it looks like. It's going to be gorgeous. I'll be back and show you what to do next if you want to do a knit 2 purl 2. There we go. So we've got our rib set up, and from this point on, if you choose to stay one by one rib, just keep going, and then eventually you can take the scrap yarn out and you'll see how pretty it is. Otherwise, I'm going to show you how to reorient your stitches, or I don't know, change the position of each stitch so that you have a 2x2 rib. I'm changing colors here because that's my pattern, because that's where we change colors, in my pattern. So we're going to knit that first stitch. I know you have a lot of ends here if you want to kind of secure them a little bit better. And then, I don't know, you might want to tie a knot. I'm okay. I'll just let them hang there. So we knit that first stitch after our marker. I'm going to skip this purl stitch that's right here, and I'm going to go ahead and knit that second one. This first one, for some reason, is always a big pain. So knit that stitch, then bring your yarn forward, purl the stitch you just skipped, and then pull those two off. So you've switched the position of that knit stitch, and now it's next to the other one, and then purl. So now you've got 2 knits and 2 purls. Bring the yarn in back. We're going to do that again. Knit. Then we're going to go get that next knit stitch, skip that purl stitch. It's a little bit easier now because that first one's a little tough. And then purl. Pull those 2 off. Next one is a purl. And it'll even out. It looks a little bit weird now, but it will be pretty, I promise. Knit. Next knit stitch. Purl the purl. I'm just holding that down with my fingernail. And then purl. Knit. Skip, knit. Hold that down. Purl. And purl. So I'm a little bit of a dork here, and I kind of chant to myself a little bit. So purl, sorry, knit, knit, purl, purl. That way I don't make a mistake. Because if you get to the end and you're off, you're going to know you made a mistake somewhere, and then you have to go back. Knit, knit, purl, purl, knit, knit, purl, purl, knit, knit, purl, purl. And you start to be able to see it here. It'll show up a little bit better once you've had a chance to do a few more rows, a few more rounds. But I will be back to show you guys what it looks like. So I've come to the end here, and I've got a knit, knit, purl, and purl. Phew! That would have been unfortunate had I ended up here, and I did last time, because I skipped one somewhere, and then I ended up with 2 knits at the end. So I knew I had done something wrong, because you're going to be done, you'll be finishing with 2 purls. And now you just keep going. And they're all set up. at some point you might want to weave in your ends if they're getting on your nerves, because they always get loose. It's kind of annoying. But soon we'll be pulling out this scrap yarn. I can't wait to show you. So I've done a few extra rounds in the dark pink so you can see what it looks like once you've reoriented all the stitches. And now we can start thinking about taking out this scrap yarn. So the yarn or the knitting gods say that you should leave it in until your piece is blocked, but I've never had the patience to leave it in. I normally pick it out because I am cheap and like to keep all my yarn ends, but as you can see, it would take forever if you did that. So I have these tiny little scissors that we can use, and make sure you're only cutting your scrap yarn. Maybe it's better to go in through here. Just cut in, being careful not to grab your pattern yarn, because that would be tragic after all the work you just did. So you see all these little holes there, just poke your scissors in the hole and cut. It's gonna make a mess when you take them out, but it'll be fun to see the end product. Oh, that's a big one. Maybe I'll get a needle. Hang on. Here's a pin from my needles. There we go. Ta-da! These little bits should be easier to pick out. This is way easier than picking it out the normal way, or the way I normally do it, rather. So let me pick all these out and I'll be back. So there you have it. All done. Mine's kind of scrunched up because I'm using a really small needle, but there you go. No edge. It'll look better once blocked. I think it looks pretty great. And then I would probably, because this would drive me crazy, I would weave this end in somehow just to close up that little gap right here. And then that's it. You're ready to keep going. Wasn't so bad, was it?